Welcome back to Business Casual. I'm your host, Nav Nanwa. Joining me right now is the recipient of the Lifetime Business Achievement Award at next week's MBOT Masquerade Ball, but he's also the founder and owner of Metalworks Studio, and you might even recognize him from being the drummer of popular legendary Canadian rock group Triumph. I am joined by Gil Moore. Gil, thank you so much for joining us here on Business Casual. An absolute honor. Thank you.
Thank you, Nav.
I think you're the first person I ever shook their hands in front of on my show, which is great. I'm speechless. But Gil, I have to say, you're someone who is a huge staple in the Mississauga community, an absolute legend when it comes to Canadian rock. But you're being recognized next week for your business contributions to the city of Mississauga, mainly through Metalworks Studio. And I got to say, before we jump into Metalworks, being part of a really successful rock band and now transitioning to run your own business, how was that transition from being a rock star to an entrepreneur?
It wasn't as hard as it sounds.
Okay.
Honestly, Nav, with Triumph, we took a very, very organized approach to what we were doing, and to some degree, we ran it like a business.
Yeah.
It's an odd comparison, I suppose, but a lot of bands were really disorganized, and we weren't. So you still have a big staff. We had a road crew of 25 or 30 guys with us on the road. We had trucking companies, laser companies, pyro companies, sound lighting, the whole ball of wax. So it's like a traveling circus. So, you learn some business skills keeping that thing, turning over every week and going from city to city. It's a lot of moving parts.
It's interesting you mentioned that it felt like you were running a business, because I know a lot of artists here in the community, and one of the things that they typically ask me about is how can they turn this into a business, or how should they approach it to make it more of a business? Because when it comes to the arts in particular, it's very easy to sort of let your passion almost shadow some of the other necessary elements to make it a formidable job, if you think about it. And a lot of those key elements get mixed, but I think it's great that you were able, with the other members of Triumph, to really configure that and put that together.
We were lucky too that we had a good partnership.
Excellent.
It seemed like Rick was always trying to come up with new ideas for songs. Mike was a kind of an expert on the record industry, because he had a job in the record industry just before Triumph started. And I had this interest in electronics and sound, so I was able to sort of, get the big PA system going and lighting. So, we were kind of, lucky in that respect that we met each other.
So I'm assuming your sound experience led to the beginning of Metalworks, which has become hugely successful. What I would say is probably the gold standard when it comes to audio and production here within Canada. And I got to ask you, how did that vision come about?
Well, before Triumph, I was actually, interested, like I said, in sound and electronics, and I was sort of in a kid business, if you will, when I was 15 years old. I was even earlier than that, 14 years old. I remember I had a disc jockey set up that I sort of made out of some of my parents' home stereo parts.
So what was the young Gil Moore playing at that time?
and it evolved into playing, but I never lost the technology side of it. And I was actually always more comfortable behind the scenes than on the stage, to be honest with you. So I think when I switched, after we stopped touring, it was actually pretty easy for me, because it was kind of a return to sound again and to audio.
Was it very important to you to open this up in your neck of the woods in Mississauga?
Yeah, we at the time we looked at moving downtown, because everyone said, "Oh, you've got to be downtown. You've got to be downtown." But I grew up out here. This is where I played hockey. This is where I learned to play golf. This is where my parents lived, and I love Mississauga. So I went, you know what? Let them come to us, and let's be the best in Mississauga. And let's and put our footprint down here. I've never looked back on that decision. I don't regret it. And when you think of the explosion in the GTA, particularly westward, actually not a bad business decision either.
And I would say, having Metalworks here in the city of Mississauga, has really added a lot of legitimacy around the art and the music community here. Like, I think, the fact that we house such a facility like Metalworks, just down the road from us here at Rogers TV, there's now a lot more interest when it comes to some of the talent coming out of the city, and some of the bands that have have been able to see success, like Billy Talent as an example. And I think the fact that you were, it's great to see somebody kind of bring it back to their hometown.
Yeah, the one thing about touring, you get to see the whole world, and I loved a lot of places we toured. I mean, I love the United States particularly. Spent so much time down there, but I really wouldn't trade Mississauga for anything. I don't, like a lot of artists, they move to LA because that's the heart of the business, or Manhattan. I wouldn't live in LA or Manhattan if you paid me. I like it right. I like it right here. And if you look at over the history of the studio, you look at the international artists that have come through Metalworks, you have to say, what's not to like?
I think the Mississauga Tourism Board owes you a huge gratitude for what you just mentioned, because
I don't know about that.
it would be great. But Gil, the one thing I have to say is, when you started Metalworks, it started off as a recording studio. Now you've spawned it off, and you have the Metalworks Institute for Sound and Music Production. We were actually talking about during commercial break just the amount of courses you are now offering through this institute. And one in particular that I thought was very interesting was around business management. And you told me that you're also working on a course related to business around event planning. Why are these skills, and we touched on them earlier, but why are these skills important for anybody who wants to get into this industry?
Well, when I started, there was no training. There was a few books that you could get, but the young people that are coming up, if you look at how much faster the world turns now, and you look at artists like Drake and Justin Bieber, who we've had at our studio and watched their success and how fast it's been.
Yes.
If you don't have either yourself or your partner or have a good manager that understands business and understands technology, you're going to get left behind. So in our programs at Metalworks, we have business componentry mixed in with the technology and the artistry, because every musician and every producer really need to understand things like intellectual property rights and how digital distribution works and all those things. So business is very important.
Yeah, and I like the fact that you mentioned, just knowing all the aspects of it, including even licensing and some of the other things that come with, having your art or having your music out there. Because, I recently went to South by Southwest, and there was a lot of seminars around, merchandising, how you can start your own store, when you go on tour, and how you can, reap the benefits of being able to sell your own merchandise through your own channel. And there's also things around licensing when you want to license your music out to commercials or to TV shows, and just the importance of really just understanding I guess the logic behind those transactions, or if you don't, lo and behold, you could be taken advantage of, right?
Yeah, and like I said earlier, it's become way more complex.
Oh, for sure.
I saw a chart last week. It's not one that we produce, but it's one I saw online, and they were talking about revenue streams to artists. And there were something like 25 or 30 revenue streams that were potential streams. I thought, how can there be that many? So I started to read them. I got to the end of the list and I went, you know what? There really are.
Wow.
And when I started, it was simple. There were gigs, and then if you were lucky enough to get a record deal, record royalties, and music publishing. So we knew, maybe 3 things. Maybe there was a 4th. T-shirts came along and merchandise and so on. But now, you've got satellite, you've got neighboring rights, you've got every fractional piece of music industry revenue, and if they're not all aggregated, musicians and artists, producers are just losing out.
Yeah.
So they need to understand it.
No, and that's a really great point. And there's so much around even just touring and just making that your main revenue stream, being that streaming online is becoming the new thing when it comes to getting your music out there. And it's becoming a very complicated industry. And I'm glad that the Metalworks is really putting their best foot forward and providing more education around that. And I do have to ask you, just because I know Sonia will probably kill me, but why? What does it mean to be honored next week, or actually at the Masquerade Ball with the Mississauga Board of Trade with the Lifetime Business Achievement Award? Because, like we've talked about, it's a great honor. You're someone that's really contributed a lot to the Mississauga business community. And, for you to receive this award, how does it feel to be recognized amongst your peers?
I just feel very lucky. The contributions to Metalworks, they have less to do with me, and more to do with all the great artists that have come through. And you know, my partners in Triumph, Mike and Rick, you know, if it wasn't for them, none of this would have happened. And you know, to the staff we have, you know, we've got, you know, 85 people there that are, you know, pulling for Metalworks every single day.
Wow.
And in the summertime, when we start doing the big festivals, we have even more.
Yeah.
And I'm proud of every one of them.
That's great.
You know, they're great folks, and you know, we try to promote harmony in the workplace as much as we can, and sort of a, you know, business-like but casual atmosphere to make people feel like, you know, they're not really, you know, working for the man in the ivory tower or something like that. And you know, I'm just very grateful that you know, the Board of Trade's choosing to honor me, but I really feel like it's really shared with those folks, the artists that have come through, and the great staff we have there, and you know, to some degree, you know, my family too. I have to thank them because, you know, without my wife and without my kids, they're behind me every day. You know, it would be very difficult for me to do what I do. So I'm a lucky guy.
Yeah, and you know, you definitely deserve it. And one thing that Sonia mentioned in the first segment is that Tom Cochrane will be presenting the award to you, which is truly phenomenal. Another Canadian legend. How does it feel to receive the award from one of your peers?
Well, fantastic. I have the utmost respect for Tom. You know, he's a great friend of mine, a great personal friend, and that's why he's doing it. But yeah, it makes it extra special for sure, Nav.
That's great. That's great. You know, we only have about a couple minutes left. I do want to ask you, what does the future hold for Metalworks, but more importantly for Gil Moore? Are we going to get that Triumph reunion tour?
Well, there may not be a Triumph reunion tour, but we do have a documentary film that's in production.
That's exciting.
And hopefully we're going to have it at the Toronto International Film Festival in 2017. That's what we're hoping. So if it stays on track, that'll be happening. As far as Metalworks is concerned, you know, just more of. We've got new programs at our school that are in at the ministry getting approved, hopefully. The studios have been doing some technical refurbishments over the last year and a half, and you know, there's some really exciting changes there. And our guys down at the live event division, I mean, they're putting on shows left, right, and center.
Yes.
This summer is going to be really busy.
Oh, yeah, like every summer. There's always new festivals popping up everywhere. Who knows? But we all want to congratulate you again for being recognized at the MBOT's Masquerade Ball. And honestly, thank you again for everything that you do in the Mississauga community with Metalworks as well as Triumph. Thanks for laying it on the line.
Thanks,
We'll be right back after this brief commercial message.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Great interview.
Yeah.